Welcome to another edition of Straight Outta Flushing. It's your boy Dexter Henry. For the first time joining me here in studio, it's my guy Tyler Ward, newest co-host of Straight Outta Flushing. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Dexter, thank you so much. I'm excited to get this started.
Yeah.
It feels like yesterday, it was just under 2 years ago when you texted me. You're like, hey, you want to come on for a segment? I was like, absolutely, not a problem. And here we fast forward a couple years later. We're co-hosting together, and I think we're going to have nothing short of an absolute blast talking Mets this year.
You know what's crazy? It's funny you bringing that up. I remember the day, maybe it was the same day that I texted you for that segment. My cousin, who's a big Mets fan, huge fan of yours, you announced on your live stream that night, I think post-game live, he was like, yeah, I'm coming on with Dex.
I recall this.
And
yes. Yeah.
She was like, yo, I just heard Wardy say she's coming on with you. And I haven't even told her this. She'll see this when she sees this episode. But now we're doing the show together. And, man, it's a lot of fun. Really glad to have you here. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We have talked a little bit through the offseason. We've talked about the Mets, and this was a very interesting offseason for the Mets. But we are here in spring training. You just came back from Port St. Lucie. First of all, talk to me. How was your trip? How was your time down there? Did you like what you see and the vibe going around the Mets? What did you think of everything going on down there?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, anytime you get a chance to go there to Florida, it's always going to be a great time, right? Always
Getting away from the cold.
Getting away from the cold, right in the peak of thinking a storm's going to happen again. So, I was very fortunate to see not only get down there when the weather was nice. It was a little chilly the first day, but then everything was good. But my big takeaway from this trip was really getting a chance to see up front and center how this team is now trying to construct for the year, especially when we look at guys working on defensive games that we're going to talk a lot about, like Beatty, Vientos, Bichette. The big storylines are really right in front of me, talking about the guys getting reps early for World Baseball Classic, Juan Soto included. Pitchers starting to get stretched out and acclimated. Are we worrying about velocity or not yet? It's that time of year where normally guys aren't throwing gas, so when you see someone do that, you're like, is that a problem? Is that a good thing? But I would say collectively, my key takeaways from the spring training trip is that the Mets look like that they're in good spirits right now, big time. Every single time that I was around there, by the clubhouse, by the field, I mean, the vibes were always good, which is always a nice sign. And that's usually the case to begin spring training, but something's different in the air this year. And you can tell that breaking up that core that they previously had with Alonso, with Nimmo, with McNeil, with even Diaz, who no one really wanted to see go. Maybe it won't pay dividends right away when looking at success rate, but I think as the year goes on, this clubhouse culture is definitely going to look pretty night and day from, I think, what we saw a year ago.
So it's funny because I think fans needed to hear that, right?
Right.
They needed, like everything that went on with this team last year, the offseason, the vibes needed to be good here around the team. So that's good to hear there. But one of the things I think, well, at least I don't know about this. I think you're very interested in this too with this team is, okay, there's a lot of positional battles. Now, some of that makes people uneasy.
Of course.
Because people want certainty.
Right.
But I think some of these positional battles, I think it's a good thing. I actually think this could be a good thing. So one of the ones that comes to mind right now is, all right, outfield, last outfield position, right? Where's Carson Benge playing? Is he going to make this team? Tauchman has got a chance here too. We know Tyrone Taylor is going to be in the mix. What do you think about this outfield positional battle, and who do you think has the edge right now? I know it's early, but who's got the edge here?
Well, I would definitely say the edge right now is who you started with. I really think it is Carson Benge. Listen,
I like that. I like that.
David Stearns went all offseason, like literally the entire offseason, reiterating to media, we're going to give Carson Benge every opportunity to basically run with right field. I mean, so much so that while I don't think this was the clear factor behind it, I think a factor into why the Mets were so comfortable with Juan Soto staying in left this year was because they knew that would be a better direction for Carson Benge to begin his career. I think that those things definitely went in hand with another. You look at Benge, what he did in the minor leagues speaks for itself. I had the privilege, I followed him every step of the way in the minors last year. And when I tell you that this is a standout prospect, that too is an understatement. I mean, a 280 plus average, 50% above league average as a hitter in the minor leagues across 3 different leagues. Had a little bit of a hiccup when he was there in AAA, but he dealt with ailment, rebounded nicely towards the end of the season. Benge, what I've seen so far in spring training, and we saw this today at the time of his recording right now, is just how much of a multi-tool talent he is. He doesn't just beat you in one way, where a guy like, for example, Mark Vientos, who he really needs his bat, solely his bat to have success, Benge is a complete 180 from that, where he can make you highlight reel catches in right field like he did a couple days ago, where he's going to throw all the way to home and going to avoid Nick Allen scoring from third like he did earlier today, or it's going to be him stealing a bag seamlessly after Nick Morabito does, his teammate a couple days ago, or it's going to be him just getting a little bit of an infield chopper to get down to first base in time, or he's going to absolutely smoke a baseball 110. Like, Carson Benge brings so much variation to this Mets outfield that I think is exactly why David Stearns, who, let's not forget, what did David Stearns do with Carson Benge? Oh, yeah, it was his first draft pick ever as team president. So when you think of leash, when you think of someone who is going to be given opportunity without it being cut short, he's the first player that I think of.
So here's the thing for me, and we know this as people who have grown up rooting for this team for a long time. We've seen a lot of positional players, highly touted. You know this, Wardy.
Right.
And you'll hear a lot of the things that you just said, and then they don't perform. I guess my question is this going to be different with him? Because the thing that I've seen thus far that excited me is the defense.
Right.
Maybe more than the hitting, the defense. Okay, this guy's got an arm in right field, so it makes that move from Soto going to left, him being in right. We've seen what he can do. We had that beautiful throw the other day. If the defense is that good, and the Mets have talked all this time, this offseason, about shoring up the defense, if he can bring that as far as positional stability here in right field, that could be huge. But some Mets fans are going to be skeptical, bro. They're going to be like, hey, we've seen this movie before, right? We've seen this before with these positional players. Do you think there's something that makes him different? Because that's my main question here. Is there something that makes him different?
I think there is something that makes him different. And one, it goes in hand with the New York Mets. Let's not forget this, right? In order for a guy like Benge to develop, he needs that proper player development to get him to that point. And that's something where over the years, the Mets have really severely lacked, especially with position players. You know, if you look at outside of Alonso and McNeil, you know, McNeil was really this scrappy slap hitter that the Mets were forced to call up later into his professional career in the minors because they really didn't have a better choice otherwise at the time. Alonso forced his way in, but clearly had the power. What do you think of their younger core group now and guys like Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos, Ronnie Mauricio? There's a lot of talent there, but there hasn't been too much stability. What can Carson Benge do to get his career started where there isn't as much fluctuation throughout his first 2 to 3 years? And what he can do is by sticking with his game. I really do think that Carson Benge is the real deal. He's a top outfield prospect in baseball, but it's the way that he carries himself. The big common consensus I've heard from people around the organization as well as actually with him is that he's never too high or never too low. He's staying even-keeled regardless of the results each day, especially when you're in a heated position player battle where there's only one spot and you've got a veteran like Mike Tauchman, who I really do think is a lock to be on this team one way or the other.
Lock,
breathing down you. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I think he's a lock. Yeah, we'll talk about him surely.
Yeah.
I think he's a lock. I think you look at guys like Christian Pache off to a great start this spring. That isn't making things easy for him. Tyrone Taylor's reminding you that he's still there. They have the MJ Melendez has had a very hot start to spring. But even with all those things happening, that's noise that is not going to bother him. And that's really why I do think that we're going to quickly realize Carson Benge, even if he doesn't start the year great with the Mets, throughout the course of the year, I am bullish that he's going to establish himself as the main go-to option in the corner.
So I like that. I like hearing that a player is even-keeled, especially for a young player. That's something you don't always see.
It's rare.
It's rare, right? It's rare you'll see that in the sport. You mentioned Mike Tauchman. You and I were having a conversation the other day about him offline here. Tauchman, and I think fans will like this too. I think the thing I look about him, he's a professional, right?
Right.
This guy's going to be a pro. On base is high. I love that. I know you like that too.
Yeah.
The Mets need guys that are going to base. They also need to drive people in. We need to see that too. But they need guys that are going to get on base. You said he's a lock to make the team. Now, some people might have looked at that and says, well, if he's a lock and he makes the team, is he anywhere a threat to Carson Benge? But then you just told me Carson Benge ain't worried about that. He's not worried about that at all.
Right.
He's going to be calm with that. I think competition is good. I think that's dope for the team and dope for Carson Benge. Tauchman, just having him as 4th outfielder, 5th outfielder, if he's a lock, where does that leave Tyrone Taylor?
Right.
Okay, you see what I'm getting?
Yes,
now,
absolutely.
Questions. These are spring training questions, right?
I think I got the answers. I just don't know if this is exactly how it's going to play out.
Okay.
Let me explain the rational reasoning as to why Tauchman's going to make the team. And it starts with the fact that Mike Tauchman is just one of 11 players over the past 3 years with at least 300 play appearances of a 350 on-base average or higher. All the other players on that list are either MVPs or yearly All-Stars. He's the only anomaly of a player profile like him.
So he's an elite company.
A very elite company.
Right.
And you add that. Then you add in, okay, Why did the Mets have to sign him on a minor league contract? If he's such a lock to make the team, why a minor league deal? Simple answer, he's entering his age 35 season or so. Grizzled veterans, even with the kind of numbers that he brings, are not great when it comes to marketability because, one, teams don't care about those player profiles until really spring training begins. And two, given his age and given the fact that many teams much rather someone younger in that role, Tauchman is a platoon player as is. He knows his role is to not necessarily play every day. It's not that he can't, it's just he knows his role is probably more in the 350 to 400 plate appearance range. Okay, understanding that role means you have even more limited options because who's in the market for a platoon bat that you don't necessarily want there every single day,
right,
but you know will be fine if he is there. And that's where the Mets found themselves in a great position. Now, when we talk about the rest of the roster, okay, if Tauchman makes the team and if Benge makes the team, what does that mean for Tyrone Taylor? And this is a great question because what the Mets just did with their lineup today is something that I highly anticipate we'll see a lot more of. It's by having Benge start in right field and having Mike Tauchman at DH. I think there will be a situation where you see Tauchman get a healthy amount of reps at DH. Benge may get some reps at DH. If Benge looks like, for whatever reason, a defensive liability, they'll take him out if they need to, put him at DH, have Tauchman go in there because he was around league average defensively last year, and then you work from there. So I do think that there's still a spot for Tyrone on this team, but to your point, it gets a lot more difficult fast if you know for certain two outfielders that were not here last year, at least at the major league level, are pretty much locks to be here at the major league level this time around a year later.
Right. So the other thing is too is like somebody may say, well, hey, if and this is just me thinking as you were talking about this. Okay, if Tyrone Taylor does not make the team, let's say Tauchman's a lock and you're going with Benge and you're going with Tauchman on this roster. We obviously know Soto's going to be in left. We know Robert Jr. is going to be in center field. We understand that. The thing about Tyrone Taylor you like is that he can play multiple positions.
Exactly.
Be in center field, but does that also open up the door for Benge to then play a little bit more in center field himself as well too, which is something I would think the Mets would want to see with his development.
Yeah, so I can tell you from people I've spoken to who are really locked in with Carson at the minor league level that have actually been like breaking down his game, like people that have worked with him and the coaching staff. From what I've heard is that Benge appears like he's going to be best fit in the corner outfield to get the max production out of him in his career. It's early to say that. I understand he's just getting his career started, so we really don't know yet. But I think the reason as to why the Mets, again, want Benge in right, want Robert at center, they probably ideally would like that to be the tandem for most of the year. And then if things happen with Robert where, say, he deals with ailment, which wouldn't shock us, unfortunately, or he's just really inconsistent, then, yeah, you could put Benge in center. The belief is that Benge can be an average center fielder, but he can be above average corner outfielder. So if you're David Stearns, what's the question? You know, like, which one do you prefer more? And do you think that maybe you could put Benge almost more in the Tyrone role in the sense of Tyrone's solely on this team because of his defensive ability. It's not
because of his bat.
Even though he's hit homers lately, and that's great for him. It's not because of his bat.
Right.
You have to ask yourself, is it logical to have a guy like Tyrone on the team still if Benge shows his ability to handle all aspects of the outfield? Where if Robert is not good for a day, you have Benge in center and Tauchman in right. You know, but then here's the other counter, and this is where it gets so tricky, Dexter. What if Robert is injured early this season and he misses significant time, God forbid?
Well, that throws a monkey wrench in everything.
And then Tyrone Taylor automatically looks like the guy that you need every day defensively in center. It's tough. I'm not saying these are conversations.
We don't want this to happen.
No, I love Robert. I'm just saying.
But these are you're right. These are the things, and I think a lot of times we're talking about positional battles here. These are the things that GMs are thinking about, that David Stearns is thinking about, right? Like, these are the tough decisions. And you just mentioned an ideal world, Wardy, which is like, okay, Tauchman makes the team, which I see a lot of value for him. Just want to be very clear. I see a lot of value for him, and I think it was a good signing by the Mets. We'll see how it all plays out. I'd love to see Benge as the opening day starting right fielder. That would be fantastic. But we don't know how any of this plays out.
Correct.
But here's the thing for me. We'll talk about this more through this episode. Positional optionality and flexibility, which the Mets have on this roster, to me is something you haven't seen in a long time. I understand fans want certainty. I get that. But sometimes this is good. It's good to figure these things out. It's good to see what you have in certain guys. I've heard the same thing as you from people around the Mets, that they see Benge in flourishing best in the corner outfield position. That's the same thing I've heard from people around that. Now, it's interesting because I think a lot of us heard early with him, oh, he's a center fielder of the future. He could be that.
Right.
This is what we heard with him coming up. But now the Mets have made their evaluation based on his development that this is what he can do. So, okay, you said thinks a lock that Tauchman gets that fourth outfielder spot. This is assuming that they don't carry a fifth outfielder on the 26-man roster, which would be interesting. I think the other positional battle that everybody's going to talk about, if you want to say it is a positional battle, is what's going to happen at first base. Because that's going to be the big thing here, right? Pete Alonso's gone. Yes, we can say Pete Alonso's gone. It's okay. We moved on. Although, Wardy, they're killing you for still being out here rooting for your boy.
Can I say something about this for a second? Because I really haven't broken it down. Okay, so I'm gonna reiterate this for people that don't know the lore here, because it became much bigger than I thought it was going to, and everything is coming straight from the heart. So I want people to hear this. I put out a post this past week or so explaining, Mets fans, please don't get mad at me for the hype I'm still going to have for Alonso when he has success this year. And fans took a great issue with not only me still supporting Alonso, but also the fact that I mentioned in my post that, it's not his fault that he left. That, he opted out multiple times, he turned down an extension, all this stuff. And I hear that, and I get that entirely. But as someone who literally understood ins and outs of every aspect of what was happening with the Alonso saga with the Mets, I can tell you in confidence, it was far more on the Mets not wanting him back unless it was exactly their specific terms, which were always going to stay short-term more than likely, than it was what he ultimately got with Baltimore. If Baltimore approached Alonso with that 5-year contract a year prior, he would have been an Oriole for over a year now. That's an absolute fact, okay? He fell back in the Mets' lap. So to the fans out there that, were ragging on me for supporting Alonso, keep ragging. People say to me, Wardy, how's Alonso doing today? What's happening at Baltimore's camp? I don't know why people would take offense to that when I openly said I follow the Orioles. I'm a fan of them, and I am. I've been a fan of the Orioles literally for a very long time, especially since the startup of their new core group. They've been a good excuse for me to lock in more on the American League, so I chose them as my team to watch.
Your team to watch.
Of course, they're not my favorite team. My actual favorite team is the Mets, but if I had to pick a team that's my favorite that I prefer in the American League, it's the Orioles. So yes, I will be talking about Alonso at times this year. When he does hit a big home run, I'm going to talk about it, and if fans have their uproar about it, that's fine, but I'm not going to just switch up on a player now that he's no longer here when he did nothing wrong to me or my fandom to be like, F this guy now. You know what I mean? Like, I was there for Pete Alonso's first ever home run at Citi Field. Now I'm just supposed to not care about him? No, I make the decisions. Like, come on, what are we doing here?
I'm going to be straight. It's your fandom to do whatever the hell you want to do with it, right? Like, I'm not going to be here telling people what to do with their fandom. And it's not like, hey, thanks for the memories, Pete, and then good riddance and bye. And I think people take things way too personally, right? You can do whatever you want to do with your fandom. It's not that serious. Pete Alonso was a great Met. He's an all-time franchise leader in the home runs. We understand he's not here anymore. We got all this.
Right.
But I'm going to say this personally for me. I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going out there and hating on Pete Alonso, except for if he plays against the Mets.
Of course.
Right?
I will say the most heinous things imaginable if he hits like 3 home runs against us.
We're going to boo him, whatever. But that's it. That's it. Other than that, wish him well.
I know.
And come on. And we're going to keep it real here, too. Mets fans, if Pete Alonso's playing the Yankees, and Pete Alonso belts some home runs against the Yankees, you know exactly what you're going to be doing.
Am I just supposed to stay silent? What is this? Like, literally the entire point is me just casually tweeting a couple home runs throughout the month, mainly against rival teams.
They're going to take your Mets card, Wardy. They're going to take your Mets card. They're going to take your Mets card.
I might as well sign on to the Orioles beat. If you're hiring, I'm here. So.
Straight out, we're going to put Wardy on Straight Out of the Inner Harbor. That's what we'll do now. That's what we'll do. It's instead of that.
One of my favorite shows is Oh, never mind. That's a tangent. All right, let's continue. Let's go on to the next topic.
No, okay. So we were talking about position, but we were talking about first base.
Yes.
And one of the things, and I didn't talk to you, and I did see a little bit of how you reacted to Pete Alonso when he was moving on, and we knew that.
Yeah, I was upset. Rightfully so.
And I understood, and I saw, and there were other people in the Mets content creation world that I saw have this and feel this way, and people's shows I went on and talked to about it. But we're here now. And now we heard, Jorge Polanco's supposed to be the replacement here, right? And could be some little bit of Mark Vientos, could be some Brett Beatty at first base. What's the best option at first base? Because this is maybe to me more of the pressing question for the fan base, more than right field, because of who it's coming after. Because this is coming after Pete Alonso, Mr. Pete Alonso fan over here. What's the best option here? Because we can discuss this. I have this feeling of like, I don't care, if that makes sense. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see if Beatty can find a home, because I like what Beatty did last year, particularly defensively at third, and I felt like his bat was starting to come around. But if Polanco is that guy, or he can give you more DH where he's feel comfortable, where it can be more revolving. I'm cool with that too.
Right.
Does it matter for you, or are you? I'm a little indifferent. I just want to see somebody take the job, do their thing, and if they do, it's cool. If they don't, well, then we have a lot of questions. But
we do have a lot of questions. Yeah. And listen, Mets fans and trying to buy into uncertainty heading into the season is always a difficult thing to do because that's what we always do. You know it. I know it.
That is the life.
And when you hear a focal point as to why the Mets did not want, or one of their biggest gripes that they had with Pete was his lack of defensive ability, you're not really doing yourself any favors by entering camp the way that the Mets have from a defensive standpoint. You know, they have no true first baseman currently competing for a first base spot. And that's not what you want when you're trying to shore up team defense. Dexter, I don't know if you recall, but the Mets were downright horrendous at times defensively last year. And in the infield, they were I know, you've seen enough games, you know. So like you saw, especially in that second half, they were just putrid at times in the infield. Just like very incompetent, which is not what you want and not what David Stearns is trying to build. So from an offensive standpoint, Jorge Polanco is, I think, might be the best bet in what you're getting. He batted over 800 from both sides of the plate last year for a Seattle lineup, and a Mariners team that were in Seattle half the year. It is not easy to hit there.
No.
So to see him finally snap out of that after having some slumping seasons due to injury as well was great to see. But Beatty's the guy I'm really most excited about in this one. And this is, let me make clear, not at all a slight against Mark Vientos at all. I like Mark. I love his family. They're all well. They're supporters of the platform. It's just been very unfortunate the past year what's happened with Vientos. And this is why I would really like to deep dive with you, Dex, because on one hand, you see the good thing that happened with Mark in year one in 2024, where the bat broke out, was getting consistent reps. Third base, he wasn't good, but it didn't matter because he was making up for it so much offensively. Like runners in scoring position, clutch numbers, late in game, like you wanted Vientos at the plate. And that was a really exciting feeling to have because it was different than your typical Lindor and Alonso. They finally had a young core talent separate from the origination of guys, Nimmo included, that was starting to perform. Then, as we got into 2025, Mark's probably feeling pretty cocky, as he should, feeling good after a big rookie year. Yeah. And things just don't work out for him. And he finds himself essentially losing, the third base job. Beatty wins it after, not doing much for them for the first month. He hits a pinch hit bomb last year off of Zach Wheeler. I was in attendance for that game, or just a bomb in general, and then he was sent back down. But when Beatty got back up, he never went back down again. That's what everything changed. You can't expect a guy like Beatty and Vientos to both continue to fluctuate for years on end before at least one of the two starts to solidify themselves. And Beatty's done that. And he started that defensively, but now he's found the bat. Yep. And that's Mark's biggest problem here, because in order for Vientos to thrive at first base, not only is he going to have to do a lot more infield work with Kai Correa, which we know he's doing in Port St. Lucie right now, but he's also going to need to take advantage of the opportunities in ways that, the pressure wasn't on then. Like, no, the pressure's on now. Like, Mark Vientos doesn't have any minor league options left. Nope. He is a very net negative defensive player and base runner for you. He's strictly a bat first player like Alonso. So if that bat isn't there, or if there isn't consistency, you have a major issue where he might be boxed out from even being on this roster halfway through the year, if not sooner.
I was thinking about him sooner.
I agree. I'm surprised that Beatty, Vientos, and Mauricio are all still on this roster. I really thought it was in the best interest to still trade one of those three and move forward because you have such a logjam. For player development reasons, when I think of Vientos too, I understand he did not perform well last year, but let's also, call it how it is. The Mets didn't do great, what we know about their actual player development with him. He said at last year's trade deadline, when asked, has he been helped? Has there been guidance that's been sought? And he said no, because no one's really there to help, basically. And
that was damning.
If you're hearing those kind of remarks right before a trade deadline, he probably had the expectation he was going to be dealt. Wasn't moved. Stays here. Has a strong start in the second half. In August, he heated up and then fell off again. Now that we're here in 2026, Brett Beatty is a man without a actual legit daily position. And that is why I do think he's going to run away with first base. Because Beatty, look at how he approached third base last year and second base. The Mets were like, we want you in there daily, but you're going to have to play, various positions. Can you handle it? He handled it in stride. Was above league average at third base, was our biggest certainty there that we're now missing in Bichette. I love Bichette, but we're not going to be as strong defensively there. That's more than likely the truth. So if Beatty can handle himself as good and professionally defensively at third, and at times at second, didn't always look great at second, but at times he looked good.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to believe that he's the guy that I have far more trust and faith in to handle first base more on the fly than Vientos, who even when he's been given reps each the past couple of years, it leaves quite a bit to be desired. Beatty's first game in spring training, it looked a little unorthodox, but he was still making every play without a problem, and he's just a more athletic talent. So if the bat can just stay competent, if it can just stay consistent with the lineup, it doesn't need to be the breakout bat. They got other guys for that. Just handle your own. I do think one of the more likely scenarios that we have this year, barring changes, obviously, because we're talking March just started, is that Beatty will get a healthy amount of reps at first, Polanco will get a healthy amount of reps at DH, and then for the times that they aren't there, let the chips fall where they may, between Tauchman, Vientos, those kind of types. Yeah.
I think that's fine. So you and I are on the same page in that I think that Beatty profiles to be able to handle first base better. And I'm doing it because some of it is what you said about Benge. I'm going to go back to Benge in a second. The makeup, right? It's that mental makeup. The fact that Beatty was sent down early last year, came back, was solid at third defensively, didn't give up the job, never went back down, right? And he got moved to second. You talked about that. And second, he was all right. He was all right. Not great, but he was all right. I'm trusting his mental fortitude to be able to do that first. That doesn't mean, folks, that it's going to work out. I'm not saying that. I have no idea.
Right. Nothing's a lock. This is all speculation at the end of the day,
It's all speculation and what I think of his mental fortitude. But I think that matters what he did last year. It's a new position. I get all that. He's not going to be the power hitter Pete's going to be. We got to get that out the way.
Right.
Forget all that. And I don't think either of us are expecting that. I think it's the best case scenario for the Mets if he does that. Now, you brought up something I found really interesting. Because I even forgot, I hadn't been mentioning Ronnie Mauricio. I'd forgotten a little bit about Ronnie Mauricio. Yeah, what's up with that and his player development? And how does this affect Vientos? Is he going to be here past spring training? If it is Beatty, if it is Polanco, here splitting the time and also with some time at DH, there's a lot of question marks about the Mets. I thought, too, they should have moved one of those guys in the offseason. But here we are now. It's not like they still can't make a deal. It's not like they still can't make those moves. I'm intrigued to see what Beatty can do. I don't know. There's something about Beatty I like. This is no shade to Vientos. I'm kind of done on the Vientos experiment. I'm kind of done with it. We've seen enough. Can his back get back to 2024? Maybe.
And there isn't a full commitment at DH right now. So, again, there is a role where it can work,
sure,
but it's up to him, like
sure,
that. And Mark knows this very well, obviously. It's all going to come down to taking advantage of the reps you get this spring. Because while spring training numbers typically do not mean much,
right,
when you're in the heart of a position player battle, as a player that only has one good season on your resume,
you better put up some numbers.
You have no minor league options. Mm-hmm. You have to put up or shut up. Like that's literally what it is. So that's more of what I've been saying about Mark, which is why I advocate plenty for him to be traded this offseason, just because the Mets don't want to lose him for nothing. I understand not wanting to trade him for nothing, but I think he still has enough value where, at least prior to spring training having begun, where maybe the Mets could have paired him in some form of package deal for something greater. I'm sure that they went over a lot of hypothetical deals this offseason with him involved, and it just did not come to fruition one way or the other. So if Mark is a guy that is pretty much, teetering as to if he's really a guy that should be at this level or not by the time we reach the deadline, do not be surprised if this year round, by the deadline at latest, if that is really the dictation in Mark Vientos' future with the club.
That wouldn't shock me as all either. I want to get to the pitching. I want to talk some starting pitching and bullpen before we wrap here today. Starting pitching. Look.
You love it. You love it, Dex. I can tell how much you're just enamored with how deep this rotation is.
No. If you're asking me if I love depth, yes. I like depth sarcastic. And I like options. I know you're being sarcastic there. Would I feel better, Wardy, if they had another frontline starter on this team? Sure. I think my issue is there's so much uncertainty, and then I think the big question for me is, all right, who's making the back end of this rotation? Are we sure we know who's making the back end of this rotation? Right? I think we know Peralta, lock, right? We're aware of that. Senga, Manai, it's about health.
Always about health.
It's about health with those guys. I said this to somebody yesterday. You tell me you're going to get 25 to 30 starts out of those guys, and with Senga, you hope they're quality, and Manai
he might give you 25, but
you're like what kind of 25, right? Right. So I wanted to preface that there. I mean, what kind of 25 matters here too. I think you feel really good. Now at the back end, we're talking Peterson, who very strong first half of the season last year. second half, right? The year before, 2024,
Electric.
great. Electric second half of the season.
Yes.
So we've seen Peterson put it together kind of for like one full year, but not all together.
Right,
in one season. But a name I think that's interested in the back end of the rotation, that possibly, and I don't know, and I don't know how you felt about it. I don't think maybe we talked about this guy a couple years ago, Christian Scott.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated in what I think somehow he's going to factor into having a big impact on the Mets this season. I think he's been out of sight, out of mind with the Tommy John surgery. Obviously, he's got to work his way back. And he's got to perform. But I always like this stuff, and I like this moxie. And I wonder if he's better as a guy, even if he doesn't start with the big club here at the start of the year, just a guy that you can feel good about coming up. This is going to sound like shade, and I'm not shading anybody, but I think it feels much better to know you can bring up Christian Scott than Tyler McGill. You don't got to worry about that anymore.
It's so funny to me that you just said that, because the first thing that was ringing in my mind that I was planning to respond to you with is that Christian Scott has all the ability to be the Tyler McGill of the Mets this year. That to a T, in the sense of someone that they will pretty much consider as more of a rubber arm, where if they want him to start games, they will have him start games, especially if, say, there's a doubleheader, you need an extra player, that kind of thing. And if you need someone to eat quality innings for you, maybe as a multi-inning reliever, I could see the Mets not being completely opposed to that, depending on the status of the club this year and their rotation, because they have a lot of depth, but we know this. We see it every year. Trust me, I'm frustrated just thinking about it. Injuries are inevitable. They will happen. Yeah. It's not a matter of if, but when they do.
Just when.
Inconsistencies inevitably happen as well. And now it's a matter of, will they be as inconsistent as dreadful for multiple months on end last year? Or are we going to get something a little bit more palatable that we can handle this time around? If it is hopefully the latter, then still I do think, to your point, I expect Christian Scott to get looks. People forget about Christian Scott, and it's unfortunate because before he was called up, he was putting up the best minor league numbers among starters not named Paul Skeens. And that's kind of a big deal. Then you think about, okay, why did Christian Scott give up home runs every single time that he was out there? Well, a big part of his problem was that he struggled against left-handed hitters in particular, adjusting the major league level, and he still had a partially torn UCL.
Yep.
So think about this. This is the first time, Dexter, in what? 3 years?
That he's been healthy?
That he's been healthy. Because even when he was done with even his year prior to the Mets in 2024, he had played that whole year with a partially torn UCL. They pushed it. They pushed it. This was always pushing the inevitable. So when they finally did his surgery, I was a little bothered just because I wish he did it sooner. I was like, I like giving Christian Scott looks, but why are we going to utilize him this meticulous way where we're going to have him eat 4 or 5 innings and then maybe he's going to skip a start? Like, just let the kid get surgery. Like, we know he's going to have to get it. So he got it. He's healthy. I definitely think he's a player that once he starts to get spring game reps, because they're happening soon, fans are going to be happy with what they see with him. Definitely a guy who I also could think, Dexter, and maybe I'm wrong on this, I think the Mets have more of a willingness to kind of throw Christian Scott in the fire of whatever they want him for than Jonathan. You know, Ton's like at least 3 years younger. He's like the really heralded top pitching prospect now. I think the Mets are going to play very smart with Tom this year to begin the year. I do not anticipate him to be on the roster at all. I think he'll be right there in AAA to begin, and
some
then they'll go on
fans
from
are
there.
like that.
Get ready for the inevitable, folks. It's going to happen.
No,
you know?
but I think you're right. I remember talking with my guy Nick Pollock of Pitcher List about this.
He's great too.
Yeah, shout out to my guy Nick. Nick's gonna definitely hop on with us and talk about some pitching at some point. But the thing he was talking about, and I think that was going to be shocking to fans, was Tong still has more pitches that he still needs to develop, that he can trust to throw in a variety of different situations.
Change up especially.
He hit on that, right? And so until that happens, I think fans were enamored, like, okay, he's got the stuff, he's got the funky delivery with the Vulcan grip and all that, and people like that. But it's like, he's still got a ways to go. You said, that was interesting that we both got into Tyler McGill stuff, because I think people might hear me say it and think I'm shading Tyler McGill, but what I'm saying is Christian Scott can fill that role, and like you said, but with more upside. Right?
Exactly.
With finally healthy, with some more upside.
You know what you're getting with Tyler. Right. And we know him at his best, which has been very entertaining, and we know him at his worst, which is just unfortunately not a major league caliber pitcher.
Nope.
So it all comes down to who's going to be more consistent, who's going to provide the health.
Yep.
And while health maybe hasn't been on Christian Scott's side, that's in the past. This is the now. Let's focus on the fact that you finally do have a healthy pitcher that might be able to be effective for you in ways that you didn't even think heading into the season. So, when we get concerned and we think about the makeup of team depth, why didn't we do this in the offseason? Why didn't we do that? It's easy to forget about the amount of in-house options the Mets have that actually look like that they're quality to a degree. Years ago, the first year under Steve Cohen was horrendous for various reasons, especially in the pitching front. And I always think of who the Mets had to defer to for depth pitchers in that season.
Oh, you're going to depress me now.
No, but they're literally just the most insane names imaginable of guys that, again, haven't touched the major league since.
Right.
So I think that's my point of it, is that the Mets have finally positioned themselves, reliever and starters alike, where they're not in a position where if, say, a couple guys go down, oh, no, we're really considering these guys from AA, or we're really considering this guy from AAA that's been here the past decade right now. Like, why are we doing this? No, you at least have 2, 3, 4 viable options, whether they're top prospects with upside or veterans still trying to make a name for themselves at the big league level that are going to help fill those voids instead of just falling off the deep end right away when things go bad.
Yeah, because if you're stressed about those, we didn't even mention the names of the people that they were bringing up, and you're like, we're really bringing up this guy?
Right.
If you're stressed, the front office is stressed too. You know that they're also like, man, we have to bring up this guy. We got to try to get a couple of starts here in mid-May to get through this. That's not what you want to do as well, too. Speaking of the back end of the rotation, a guy who pitched very well on Sunday that we saw, Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes, I thought, was an interesting signing the previous offseason by David Stearns. Clay Holmes pitched well. He was pretty solid last year. A little fatigued at the end, but you got to remember, this was the furthest he had been going as a starter. He really had gotten stretched out, hadn't pitched as much innings before.
Remember what he did against the Marlins, too. He had the biggest start when the Mets needed it. No one else stepped up that
Nobody
series.
else
But Clay Holmes did. I know I took the words out of your mouth. I'm sorry.
No. It's not like it's not that you took the words out of my mouth. You just took me back to the Marlins series. I didn't need to go back to that.
It's anew. It's 2026. New Mets. Dexter,
right.
Wardy, right here on New York Post.
You're right. But Marlins at the end of the season is triggering for us all.
I understand.
We know this. But he's been good so far in spring training. From what we've seen with him, what have you liked that you've seen out of Holmes this year? And do you think he's primed to even have a better year? Because I think it was solid for year one for him in Flushing. Do you think year two in Flushing can even be better for Clay Holmes?
The quick reason as to why I think and expect Clay Holmes to do better than he did last year is because he should have more protection now, okay? He should have a little bit more breathing room when it comes to pitching talent around him, where he doesn't feel like he needs to be under high-pressure cooker situations for the entire second half, the way he probably felt knowing that the Mets are spiraling as much as they did. And he still put up some solid performances. Listen, in his first year as a starter-turned reliever since 2019, he was second or I think at worst third on the Mets in innings pitched. He had over 160 last year, which is really, really good for your first year back. So he added the curveball back in his arsenal this year, working with Justin Willard, Mets pitching coach. Not a pitch that he's going to use as much for swing and miss, but just more so a pitch that can maybe help him set up, especially against lefties. He is definitely a guy who, what we've seen so far this spring, gave up an earned run in 4 innings, with really good 4 strikeouts in that final start. Now he's going to play with McLean for Team USA in the WBC. I hope they play great. I hope they stay healthy.
I knew you were going to say the last part.
Right. But that goes without saying.
Right.
Clay's good. And, if this is a year where he begins the year maybe either third or fourth in this rotation, you're in good hands, because he positioned himself to really be, it's crazy to say, but when you think of that entire rotation last year, Clay was the most reliable. David Pearson fell off a cliff in the second half. Kodai Senga was great in the first half, but nowhere to be seen in the second half. Shaman and Frankie Montas were literally nowhere to be seen all year. It really came down to Clay Holmes being that one fixture of a certainty, which was a low bar. He only averaged around 5 innings per start. You want more length. That's the main thing I'm hoping to see from Clay this year. Can he tap in a little bit more? Can we get him at least 175 innings this year? Can he give us more 6-inning of quality outings? Because I do think his stuff is going to play. And now that you have Peralta and McLean from the jump this year, that's some nice breathing room for a guy like Clay, who I think can kind of just more focus in on just trying to be the best pitcher he can be. Not that he wasn't already,
right,
but he kind of became the guy at times last year when that should have never been the case.
No.
The goal, and God willing, is that will not be the scenario this year.
Although we said injuries are inevitable, folks. We understand that. But you're right. Mindset into the position that you're thrust into, the pressure that you have up to your talent, that matters a lot. And so he had a lot of times where we were looking at him last year down the stretch. All right, Mets have lost 3 in a row. Now Clay Holmes is starting. We need him to go give you 6. And been nice, but he already was being stretched out further than he ever had been. So asking him to give you 6 was a really tall ask.
Now you can. Now you're a year in.
Yeah.
Now you let him settle a little bit. Now it's
Yeah.
like, okay, now we can take off the training wheels. Now we'll just let you do your thing. So I'm curious to see the kind of year he's going to have, obviously, especially on how he kind of feeds off of if he has a bad outing. Because I noticed last year he had some stretches where he looked rough for there was a north of a month stretch where Clay Holmes was just not overly viable. But even then, you still didn't hate him out there just because he was still better than what you were getting. Because, again, that's how low the bar was for the Mets this past year. And that's why them having a quality rotation this year is the exact path to them at least making playoffs, if not hopefully having a deep run.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing. One other thing I want to talk about in terms of positional battles, so let's talk about the bullpen, because the Mets bullpen has always been interesting. And I think relief pitchers, it's so volatile, man. Like, sometimes you don't know what you're going to get year to year. And this is why it's tough to build a good bullpen. How are you feeling about this bullpen right now? Because I'm still a little shaky. So a lot of it has to do with, look, we understand Diaz is not here. Your boy Devin Williams, I'm calling him your boy now.
He's my boy
He's
now.
your boy now.
Can't wait. Once we meet Devin during the season, I'll be like, "What's good? You're my boy now."
There we go. I'm going to say that.
Dexter
we'll say
said
that
it. I didn't say it.
I said it. It's fine. Look, people overreact. He gave first pitch of spring training. He gives up the home run.
Oh, I was there. His season's over.
It's over.
It's over.
Get him out of here. We're joking. People are going to overreact with that. I do think there's some interesting arms in his bullpen, though. Huascar Brazoban, another guy coming back. I think I've always liked his stuff. Can he put it together? Can he stay healthy? Health is a concern with him, too. I think another name, I want you to hit on all these. Another name we got to talk about, Tobias Myers, which I think is a very underrated pickup in that Freddie Peralta trade. A guy that had a really good season for the Brewers last year, can pitch well in this bullpen. You could have some concerns about lefty options here in the bullpen. Are the Mets depending too much on Brooks Raley here? There's a lot of question marks I have about this bullpen. I hope it's good, but I don't know. What's your vibes on this bullpen right now?
So let's start with the top. Before Myers, who did you mention?
I mentioned, who did I mention before Myers? Brazoban.
Brazo, yes.
Yeah, Brazo.
To finish on Brazoban, I was just saying he has 3 squirrel innings so far to begin spring. The only downside for Brazoban, I've been reiterating this a lot on my YouTube channel, is that it just isn't, in my opinion, I understand wanting to play for your country completely. So, I don't fault a player there. But when you're on a team and you're in a position battle, it doesn't do you any good. And that's where I kind of have a little bit of a question mark when certain players are still going out of their way to do it. Especially Brazoban, who's still under club control, is going to be in the organization no matter what to begin the year.
Right.
I could understand it a bit more because the Mets have some, minor league signings with spring training invites that are playing in the WBC. Daniel Duarte is an example of exactly that. And, that's good for him. But I can understand it more because for a player like him, he may not even make the team out of camp. And if he doesn't make the team and say he gets released and then he didn't play the WBC, he's like, well, I didn't make the team. I didn't even get to rep my country. That sucks. So, I hear you. I get that. You have fun. Do your thing. But for Brazoban, he's under club control. I don't know if this is going to be the best for him in the sake of making this bullpen this year. Some people think Brazoban's a lock. I don't know if you feel that way. I don't view him as a certainty at all just because he hasn't been a certainty the past 2 years. So I don't know why I should automatically just view him as that now because the Mets have a position battle for the final 2 to 3 spots. No, when you mentioned Tobias Myers, that's the key standout in this one, okay? I could go on and on talking about him, but I'll be very quick because I know that we're probably going longer than typical as is.
I will say this quickly. The reason he's a standout for me, too, I think that he's going to be able to give them a little bit of innings out of the pen. He's a I don't know if that's part of what you was going to say.
Yes.
But this is why I love what he can do for this bullpen.
Yeah, no, he reminds me a lot of Trevor Williams when he was with the Mets. Because when Trevor Williams was here, especially in 2022, he was like that huge Swiss Army knife. Starter, reliever, he got you. I'm forgetting which one he was better at. It might have been a reliever where I think he was just nails for a while. But to the credit of Tobias Myers, so was he last year. Yeah. As a starter, he wasn't good, but as a reliever, he had a sub-2 ERA. Yep. So he's already pitched 5+ innings for the Mets this spring. He's only given up a run or two. He's looked good. I'm excited to see more Tobias Myers. He looks like that he's going to be the biggest crafty weapon the Mets have in their bullpen. Where we talked about Christian Scott and kind of that role. They're going to defer to Myers first, though. He's going to be the first guy that they want in kind of lawn relief for various circumstances that you just kind of throw him in there because you need him in there.
And Trevor Williams was so solid for the Mets in that role. 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts for Tobias Myers this spring. So you like that. Only 1 walk, 5 hits he's given up. That's first. No homers. No Devin Williams here.
Nice.
So he's solid there. There's some young arms too, though. I want to talk about in the bullpen, right? Because you got Dylan Ross, you got Jake Lambert. Lambert looked good in his first appearance. He looked really good. those guys who can really throw hard, that you're looking for some of those guys that can give you high leverage pitches and high leverage innings at the back end of that bullpen. Do you think those are two guys that can make this bullpen? Or who do you want to see make this bullpen? Because I kind of agree with you. Brazelman, I love the upside, but I don't know if he's a lock. He's going to have to show me a little bit more, and it's about consistency.
It is about consistency, and I think the fact that the Mets don't have enough certainty in their back end is why he may make it in the end.
Right.
It benefits him, even with the WBC. But as you mentioned in Dylan Ross and Ryan Lambert, what I love so much about these guys is these are in-house homegrown talents that are flamethrowers. And both of them last year had an immense amount of success in the minor leagues. Lambert helped the Double-A Rumble Ponies win their championship last year, was a fixture as their closer in that. And this is a guy who isn't big in stature. You know, like me, I can relate. He's a little bit taller than me, though. A little bar with me. But not your typical, like 6'4" flamethrower the way that Dylan Ross is. Like, Dylan Ross is like 6'4", 6'5", pumps
Imposing
absolute gas. He's a monster. Lambert's much smaller. Yeah. But Lambert still throws ridiculous heat. And interestingly enough, throughout the first week or so of spring training, Ryan Lambert leads all of baseball and like his stuff plus per TJ Stats on X. For those that know what I'm referencing right now, he was 17% above league average between his two pitches, and his fastball was well above league average. So that thing's fiery early. Normally you have concerns. You're like, oh no, I don't want a guy throwing gas this early in spring. It's still February at the time. But when he consistently does that, and that's just his game, it's okay, because that's the Ryan Lambert way. So yes, Dylan Ross, Ryan Lambert, two guys you can fully expect to impact the Mets bullpen. I'd say right now Dylan Ross is in and Lambert's out, only because Ross is already on the roster. He was moved on the roster in that series last year. Never made his debut, unfortunately, but now he will get that opportunity. He'll get his spring starts soon as a reliever, and then we'll go from there. But Lambert is someone who, if he does not crack the team out of camp, he will be with the team at some point this year. And probably sometime in the first half, because his stuff is so legit. The only qualm that people argue is, he walks so many guys, because when you throw a lot of gas, naturally you're going to be a little bit of, wild things straight from Major League. It's going to happen, but
yeah, you're going to see that.
But like with the transition with these kind of pitchers is, the walk rates are going to more than likely come down, especially when you have a pitching staff at the Major League level that are confident in really working with these guys. So Lambert and Ross may have walk rates in the 4s or the 5s, but when they get to the Major League level, expect the Mets to make sure that they're, being smart with it. They're not going to give him a crazy leash if he's walking everybody and their mother and, throughout 5 outings, he has, an 8+ ERA. They're not going to do that because they don't need to do that. They just want to seamlessly put these guys in when the time's right. If it works out, great. If not, you send them back to the minors, have them work a bit more, and then wait for the next opportunity. But those are two guys Mets fans have not been paying attention to. Make sure you're paying attention to this spring because they're bringing the heat. And Brooks Raley, that's the other one, Dex. I want to turn this back to you real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because we were talking about this before we went live here. You mentioned how are the Mets a lefty short, right? You look at Brooks Raley, you look at how high quality of a reliever he is in this back end. So you think that the New York Mets are in a position right now where they are comfortable heading into the year with essentially just one on-paper quality lefty. They have some others. They have another that they brought in recently that was with the Brewers in 2024 and had a lot of success. But you're still banking on what was a down 2025 for him. So, really, the lone certainty. How do you feel?
Don't like it. But, this is the life of the Mets fan. You have lived a lot of times with knowing, hey, going into a season, hey, there's one lefty arm in the pen that we can trust. When have you had the option of having multiple lefty arms you're going into? I don't like it. The reason I don't like it, Wardy, is because you're leaving yourself really vulnerable here, right? What if we're going to go to what ifs? Wardy said earlier, injuries are inevitable. And you were right, my friend. Injuries are inevitable. Brooks Raley, can he stay healthy? We know the height of what he can pitch. We know what he can do as a lefty arm, but it's like, is the health going to be there? I would love some other insurance. I'd like some competition for him so he knows that he's not comfortable. I just like that a little bit too. So right now I don't feel great about it. Do I think Stearns is going to look to address this? Yes. I hope so. I also will always say this. It's funny because this episode, when we're talking about this, we're talking a lot about positional battles. We're talking about how we feel about the roster and everything of that. The roster does not have to be set exactly optimally for this team at opening day. I think everybody likes that to happen, but that doesn't mean that. You have mentioned multiple times in our conversation here, this could change and that could change. Carson Benge might not be the starting right fielder on opening day. I don't know exactly how the bullpen is going to look. I feel a little bit better if I had two lefties going into opening day that I felt like I could trust. But I hope it's something that the Mets can address throughout the season. The one thing I will say, in the way Stearns has managed the bullpen that I have been a fan of, and pretty much a little bit with this team, and maybe even when he didn't have as much flexibility last year, if guys aren't performing, they will send guys down. Right. No, Raley is not necessarily the guy we're talking about in that, but even when you're talking about with Ross, with Lambert, things like that, I think that's the thing that gives me confidence in building the bullpen. The bullpen is the way I look at it is it's something you want to see hopefully build towards a point when you get to before the trade deadline where you look at your bullpen and say, hey, I feel good about this. Oh, no, we need to go to get this. Oh, we need to go get this. We need to upgrade here, or we need to subtract here. That's what I want to see. How's the bullpen being built as we move throughout the season? That's what's going to make me feel better. But as far as Raley being the sole lefty that we trust right now, not feeling so great about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think every Mets fan watching this is probably with you because this is the same story, the same song and dance literally every single year, at least under Steve Cohen. The Mets have always been having one quality lefty, at least that stood out, but another that really not so much. 2021, Aaron Loop had an anomaly of a season. He was awesome. Yeah, him and Anthony Banda, popping their drinks post-game, having a lot of fun. That was fun, but But Aaron Loop bagged a contract from the Angels and swindled them because he knew exactly he was never going to put up that performance again. And he really wanted to come back to the Mets a year later. He made it known. He's like, I really did want to come back to the Mets, but this was too much money to pass up.
Hey, man, he had to get that bag. I understand.
He did. But you look at the lefties since then, again, just not enough quality. I love Brooks Raley. But the issue is he's in towards the tail end of his 30s now, right? We're getting closer. If he goes down with ailment significantly, which wouldn't shock any of us, then you're in a major problem because they don't really have the protection there. So this is why all offseason I advocated for the Mets to acquire a quality lefty. They're probably going to be in the market for one at the traded line. They're probably going to overpay for one at the traded line. We'll wait and see when that happens. But yeah, the Mets have a bunch of relievers right now. We'll see exactly who is going to crack those final spots. But the good news is that I think whoever cracks those spots, Aber, Alzaway, Craig Kimbrell included, when we think of the veterans that are competing for spots, I think that things are going to be looking good. And the one thing I can credit David Stearns for, as much as I despise the man for helping the Mets have the most pitchers ever utilized in a season last year in Major League history, and I really do. I'm still frustrated with you about that, David, but I understand injuries were a key factor, but how proactive he is with the bullpen is what I admire as well.
I love it.
It's good knowing that you at least have a Pobo or GM that's not going to sit on his hands for a literal month of a guy who's clearly looking incompetent in the bullpen. Like, how many opportunities does he need to get before we come to a realization this isn't going to work? Naturally, throughout the course of the year, sometimes they give a leash longer than they should.
Sometimes.
But there are justified reasons behind it. The reasons we may just not know publicly is they're working on things behind the scenes, like including working on maybe a new pitch and say that pitcher's repertoire. Or maybe he's having, for whatever reason, like the yips, or like Ryan Helsley, who just forgets how to pitch at all as soon as he becomes a New York Met. Shout out to the Baltimore Orioles. Hope Alonso has fun with that one. But
why you got to go bringing up old stuff?
I know. Listen. I wouldn't be a true Mets fan without bringing up past trauma.
That
one
is,
goes in hand with the other.
We're here to help. We're here to help you heal. No, you're right. I like the word you use there too, proactive, and that's how I feel about how Stearns has handled the bullpen, and I've been a fan of that. Hey, you see it's a problem, somebody's not performing, all right, we're going to move on, we're going to keep this thing going, we're going to figure out what works. And like, you're right, sometimes we got to pump the brakes too because we don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes with some pitchers. You said working on stuff. Yeah, Ryan Helsley. We're not going to take you back.
I will tell you this much.
Yeah.
I do think Ryan Helsley's going to have a very good year. You want to know why?
Because he's not on the Mets.
Because he's not on the Mets, and he's in a small market. Some guys just aren't built for it. And, Buddy went from being whole career calm St. Louis to New York.
Yeah,
halfway through the season. It's good. You're either gonna make it or break it. And what the Mets learned from trading for small market players this past year is that most small market guys that they get, unfortunately, are going to have that small market mentality. Cedric Mullins was non-existent as soon as he came here. Ryan Helsley was non-existent. When you even look at some of their other pieces, Tyler Rogers was very good. But I miss him dearly.
Yeah.
Really do. Gregory Soto, not so much. He was good when he first came here, and then he really got rocked towards the end. I'm trying to think, was there anyone else notable there from that traded line coming from the small market?
Those four. Yeah.
But yeah, so the trend, though, again, with most of them is that they didn't pan out, even when they seemed like good moves on paper. So you can't fault David there. It made sense.
I love the trade deadline.
When the trade deadline was done, we're like,
loved it.
Would have loved another starter, but David did the best he could. He didn't give up a Kane's ransom for Luis Robert, and now we got him for just Luis Angel Acuna. And this is not a slight on Acuna, but he had... Ironically, he would have a path to the Mets right now because of Lindor's injury. Start at shortstop.
He would have had to start.
I know. It is kind of...
But that's how it goes sometimes.
That's how it goes. You trade Jet Williams, you trade Acuna, your two backup shortstop options, and bam, now you need a backup shortstop.
Ronnie
Mauricio, it's your time. Let's see what happens.
We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. All right, but this went well. We talked about some positional battles here on Straight Outta Flushing. Wardy's first episode here was a fantastic one. Wardy, again, I'll say it is a pleasure to have you on. We're going to have a lot of good conversations like this throughout the season. I hope you guys enjoy this. We have a lot more stuff coming, not just in studio. Also, we will be at Citi Field a lot this year, different events. We're going to have different guests on with us. Wardy and I are just going to have fun. If you want to have fun talking Mets baseball, definitely come and join myself and Wardy on Straight Outta Flushing. Also, you can stay tapped into what Wardy is doing on his YouTube channel. He's still doing that as well, so please check him out. We will be talking a lot of Mets stuff. It's going to be fun, Wardy. It's going to be good.
Dex, thanks so much.
This was a good first one. We got a lot more to come for you, so keep up the good vibes. Let's go Mets, and we'll catch you next time. Another edition of Straight Outta Flushing.
Peace out, everybody.
Peace.